Hey, what's up guys, it's Renaldo here. So this video is going to focus on how the Agricultural Minister, John Steenhuisen, is currently overseeing the worst livestock disaster on record for South Africa. Now, ultimately, the plan with the minister and with the department to deal with this foot and mouth outbreak is in order to get a rollout of vaccines that is state controlled. Now, we all know what usually happens when something is state controlled. And it's also quite ironic that Minister John Steenhuisen, who forms part of the DA, that is anti state control, is suddenly supporting state control when it comes to this disease. Now, of course, this is in the Act and it comes from 1984 that this is a state controlled disease. But you would think that the minister would play ball with organizations like Sakeliga, SAI, and Vrystaat Landbou in order to circumvent this. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Now, before we get into the context of this video, please be sure to subscribe to this channel if you've not done so. It's absolutely free. Most of you that regularly watch my content aren't subscribed, but you can fix that by just clicking the subscribe button below. Alright, so I'm going to give you some context by stating what Sakeliga said, then John Steenhuisen's response to that, and then eventually Sakeliga responding to John Steenhuisen. Let's have a look. Alright, so as you can see here, this is Sakeliga's X profile. And over here they are saying, Sakeliga, SAI and Vrystaat Landbou have sent the minister and his colleagues a legal letter of demand regarding the foot and mouth disease outbreak. Here's what you need to know. A demand. Sakeliga requires written confirmation by Friday the 30th of January 2026 that, number one, livestock owners may procure foot and mouth disease vaccines. Number two, private operators may administer vaccines according to their own risk management. And number three, no state gatekeeping or red tape will prevent this. Now, the legal position is Sakeliga's understanding of relevant legislation and regulations is there is currently no legal impediment to private owners of livestock procuring and administering relevant foot and mouth disease vaccines. Outside of controlled areas, no measures appear to be prescribed. The law does not prevent private vaccination. Should the minister claim any legal impediment exists, we have demanded explicit written statement of disagreement, full explanation of the alleged impediment, complete statutory references and documentation, and copies of all relevant documents. Not an impediment to state efforts. Allowing private vaccinations would enable those who wish to respond immediately to do so, allow for widespread decentralized measures, and lastly, allowing access to privately sourced vaccines, ample supply available. And of course, then if you would like to support Sakeliga, you can do that over there. So in essence, what Sakeliga is saying over here is, listen, we understand that there are hot zones that only the government can deal with, but farmers that aren't affected by that, are they allowed to vaccinate their herd? Because ultimately, this foot and mouth disease outbreak has spread to 7 of the 9 provinces. So to those farms that it hasn't affected yet, can they so long just vaccinate to speed it up, to not interfere with the government, but rather to assist the government with this rollout of vaccinations that need to take place? Just asking questions to the minister, saying, if we can't, please explain why we can't. Now, John Steenhuisen looked at the date and said that if you want to delay this by a court process, then continue with the litigation, which is not really what they asked for. They said, can you just answer these questions to guide us on whether we can vaccinate, because the law is quite silent on this. And in actual fact, we believe that we can vaccinate. We are just asking you for clarity. Then John came out and said, well, you know, if you want to delay this process, then delay it, which also doesn't make sense, because if you are somebody that's not affected by the foot and mouth disease outbreak and you just want to vaccinate your herd in order to prevent them from getting foot and mouth, how is that interfering, or how is that delaying the process? Well, John Steenhuisen then came back. The expiry date came and went. It is now the 1st of February as I'm making this video, and there was no response from the minister just to the questions, Because remember, it wasn't a legal letter, it was just asking, give us clarity. And if you won't, then we were forced to take you to court to give us answers. So in actual fact, it's John Steenhuisen that is causing this delay because he couldn't just answer a couple of simple questions. So with that being said, let's listen to what John Steenhuisen has to say here.
Hi everybody, John Steenhuisen here, Minister of Agriculture, and I just wanted to pop in to talk a little about the legal papers that we've received and the threatened court case against the Department of Agriculture because we're not allowing a free-for-all for vaccines.
Okay, I'm not going to defend Sakeliga here, but that's not what they said. And also, they didn't threaten legal action. They said that if you can't answer the questions, they will be forced to take legal action, because you would expect that a minister would be able to answer a couple of questions for organizations that represent a lot of farmers in this country.
Very clear in terms of the Animal Control Act that FMD remains a state-controlled disease. That being said, however, at every step of the way, I've included the private sector in the process to get us to the point where we now have a plan that we can roll out. From the Lekgotla, which for the first time brought the private and public sector together, to the Ministerial Task Team, which brought the private vets and academics together with state vets, and now to the Implementation and Monitoring Committee, which has brought together agricultural organizations together with the department to monitor that. We obviously, our priority now is to get vaccines out. I'm deeply concerned that if there are now going to be litigation and court cases, it could well delay or derail our opportunity to do so if the...
How will it delay the process if you're not actually interfering with the government doing their rollout like they plan to do, but allowing other farmers to do it themselves too? This would actually speed up the process. You can say that, listen, we will allow it, but you can only use these vaccines. But no, instead you are making it like it's going to be this case of, oh, it's going to slow everything down. This has been going on since 2019, the foot and mouth disease outbreak. This has been since 2019, and now, only now, it's a Lekgotla and meetings. This is long overdue. There's already been over 6 billion rands worth of damage to the livestock industry in South Africa because of the failure by the government to deal with this outbreak.
The very basis upon which the state controls diseases is now challenged. Now is not a time for division. Now is a time for us to work together to make sure that the plan that we've put on the table is rolled out and executed at speed and scale as quickly as possible. And as I've already announced, that will include the private sector. That must be what unites us at the moment, and that must be our prime focus over the next few weeks. There'll be plenty of time down the road to litigate and get involved in all sorts of legal arguments. But now is the time for us to immediately focus on getting FMD under control. And that means our full undivided attention across the sector on the FMD crisis.
What I find fascinating is that John Steenhuisen has been the Minister of Agriculture for 1 year and 8 months, roughly. And suddenly now there is this urgent request to work together. This foot and mouth disease outbreak has been since 2019. Now please note that John Steenhuisen, when he took office, didn't clean house. He didn't get rid of all of these useless officials that has allowed this disease and outbreak to get to the point where it is now. So John Steenhuisen is still being consulted by the same individuals that has caused this outbreak to last for 7 years. Think about that for a second. He was very quick to get rid of his chief of staff, Ramon Cabernac, because of pressure from the DA. But when it actually came to performance evaluation, how people within his department dealt with this outbreak, nada, nix, fokol. It's absolutely absurd to think that suddenly, after 7 years, the minister, who's been a minister for roughly 1 year and 8 months, let's call it 2 years just to round it off, and now there's this urgency to deal with it, and using the same officials that failed these farmers. You can understand why these farmers have got no trust in the Department of Agriculture, because it's already cost them over 6 billion rand. So many farmers have gone under because this is a state-controlled disease, meaning the farmers can't take matters into their own hands. If they do, they are breaking the law, and there can be consequences legally for them by the government. So this is where we are right now. And instead of just playing honest politics here and playing open cards with the farmers, he is now still beating around the bush by trying to say that this litigation will delay the process. When in actual fact, if you have common sense, it's not. It will speed it up, actually. The litigation wants to find out whether farmers can vaccinate their own herd, helping the government. But let's have a look to the response that Sakeliga posted. So Sakeliga has responded saying, breaking, Minister Steenhuisen triggers litigation by refusing to disclose legal basis for foot-and-mouth disease vaccine prohibition. The minister has missed the deadline to respond to our formal letter of demand. Context: Sakeliga, Sai and Free State Agriculture wrote to Minister Steenhuisen stating that we cannot find any impediment in law preventing farmers and private parties from procuring and administering FMD vaccines. We demanded the minister state whether he agrees or disagrees, and if he disagrees, disclose his legal basis. Next steps: Sakeliga, Sai and Free State Agriculture have now instructed our attorneys to prepare litigation to review and have set aside the minister's apparently unlawful prohibition, apply for further or alternative relief as applicable, monitoring the minister's conduct. We are also monitoring the minister's statements and conduct in light of Section 27 of the Animal Disease Act 35 of 1984. This section exempts the state and officials from damage claims only in cases of bona fide good faith conduct, undermining his own desire to avoid litigation. Earlier this week, Minister Steenhuisen insisted he wished to avoid litigation, yet when given a simple opportunity to state his legal position, he refused. Had he been confident in the lawfulness of his conduct, he could have easily responded with reference to his legal grounds. It is unfortunately common among government officials to prefer drawn-out litigation to swift resolution. So as you can clearly see, it's pretty much what I've stated as well, that John Steenhuisen doesn't actually have any legal grounding, so that is why he didn't respond. And this is now why, instead of just saying, okay, let's have a meeting and let's see how we can work together, instead John Steenhuisen remained quiet, and now it has forced Sakeliga, Sai and Vrystaat Landbou to take this matter to court. But it's important, however, to note that this isn't going to delay anything, because the government can still go and roll out the vaccinations. They don't have to stop pending this court case. This court case is something separate because it applies to people that aren't directly affected by the law, by saying, you know, the areas that are affected and you can't touch or do anything, and it has to now be left to the government because it's a state-controlled disease. Well, ultimately, all they want to find out is whether they can be proactive and do something rather than having to wait for the state, which, to be fair, has now been 7 years, and they still have not dealt with this outbreak adequately. And also, important to note, the overwhelming majority of farmers agree with Sakeliga, Sai and Vrystaat Landbou. I'm pretty sure that 90% of farmers want to deal with this on their own, because who better to fix the situation than the people that actually know what is wrong and how it needs to be fixed? But instead, the ANC government that clearly now has the support of Minister John Steenhuisen, it wants to control this disease because it's a state-controlled disease. I never thought I would see the day where a DA minister would agree that the state needs to be in control of things in this country. The DA has always said that they're against the state control of things, but now here he is wanting to further that. Even from a legal perspective, he could have played both sides over here, and he could have said, yes, I am the minister and I'm bound by the laws of this country, but hey, guys, I'm batting for you. I hope that you get this done. You know that we don't agree as a party with state control, so good luck. But instead, this is what we got. A minister that has time and time again shown that he is actually not representing his political party. He is representing the interests of the government and the ANC, which is really problematic. Now, ultimately, this can also just be doubled down on by showing you the following thing, which is definitely going to give you some cause for concern. Francois Rousseau said, published yesterday, government gazetted new EU export quota rules. How it works is simple. The EU sets how much South Africa may export. Our government decides who gets access. First criteria is B-BBEE status, brought to you by the Department of Agriculture. And as you can see here, you can go and find it there on your own. Over here, one of the first requirements is the broad-based black economic empowerment status of applicants, right there. And this has been implemented by the Department of Agriculture. So not only is the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, supporting state control in the sense of this disease and the vaccination rollout of it, but also he is promulgating new legislation. This is very important, because if people want to come and say, oh, but look at this party implementing this and they don't agree with that, but they're implementing it, the difference here is that the minister is proposing new legislation. That is the difference. So John Steenhuisen and his party, who proclaims to be against B-BBEE, is now promulgating new legislation that doubles down on broad-based black economic empowerment. How does this make sense? You know, this is my personal opinion now, and of course you can call me a bitter X and whatever you want to. To the DA, you guys need to get rid of John Steenhuisen. I mean, it's patently clear that this guy is causing you a lot of concern. But then again, as I've seen and as I've experienced, this is not just John Steenhuisen. This is the top leadership of the Democratic Alliance, the people that sit on the federal executive. I mean, what more can John Steenhuisen possibly do to damage the DA? From the White House, in which he pretty much sang the praises of the ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa, to ultimately the credit card fiasco, the Dion George fiasco, getting rid of Andrew Whitfield, getting rid of Emma Powell, getting rid of Ramon Cabernac, getting rid of me. There's so many examples of John Steenhuisen failing at every single turn, and yet the DA is quiet and supporting their leader. Now, I'm not here to fix the DA, because I believe there's a lot more broken with the DA than just John Steenhuisen, but you would think that this is a logical first step in trying to resolve this issue that has plagued the DA since the 2024 elections. Anyway, to conclude this video, it is very clear that the overwhelming majority of farmers in this country want to vaccinate their own herd. They do not want the state to get involved. They want to do their own thing because they know what is best for their farm and for their herd, and they won't cause any issues with their herd that could prevent them from exporting or providing milk locally, etc., because ultimately it will affect their pockets. And as we have seen to date, it's more than 6 billion rand that this has caused farmers in this country. And then, of course, the irony out of all of this is the government says this is a state-controlled disease and you're not allowed to do anything. But if we fail and we cost you money, then you can't claim money back from the government. And the DA and John Steenhuisen is in support of this, so much so that he's willing to go to court and not just answer the questions that Sakeliga Sai and Vrystaat Landbou had. I'm washing my hands from all of this, because ultimately now people are waking up to what I've said a year and 8 months ago, and it doesn't look so much like a bitter X anymore, does it? Because the facts speak for themselves, and boy oh boy do they paint a picture. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you so much for tuning in. Smash that like button, share this video far and wide. Don't forget to subscribe. It's absolutely free. However, if you would like to support this channel financially, you can consider becoming a member. It'll cost you R39.99 a month, and that is in support of me and this channel. And you can do so by clicking the join button below. And that's all I got to say. Till later, cheers and peace out.
You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say, I wear my massacre. You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say, I wear my massacre. I wear my massacre. You don't even know me, but every time you see me, you say, I wear my massacre. I wear my massacre.